Michael! Why are you sleeping there?
Late at night after work. I was surprised to see my nephew, Michael, sleeping in a doghouse with his pet dog as I passed by my sister and brother-in-law's house. Huh? Mirabelle, why are you here? I lifted up my groggy nephew to find out what was going on and was shocked by the unbelievable story he told. It turns out my sister and her husband left Michael at home and went on a trip with their mother. What's more, my brother-in-law had put Michael in the doghouse instead of inside the house, citing the cost of electricity as the reason. The pet dog looked emaciated but was cuddling close to Michael, watching us intently. My heart ached at the sight of them, and I hugged them tightly. Thank you for telling me. I have an idea now. I was planning a revenge against my irresponsible sister and brother-in-law. My name is Mirabelle. I'm a young professional in my second year of work since graduating from college. My job is busy but fulfilling, and I enjoy my days to a certain extent. I live independently and freely now, but as a child, I always seemed to be watching other people's faces. I think this was due to my family environment, where my parents doted on and spoiled my older sister, Mary, while being strict with me. Mary, 2 years older than me, had a cute face and was good at acting adorable. However, behind the scenes, she looked down on me and ridiculed me. When adults weren't watching, she would say mean things and take my things. My sister, who did whatever she pleased, was never recognized by the adults for her true nature. They always adored her bright and cute appearance. My parents always prioritized my sister over me. Her clothes were all new, while mine were her hand-me-downs. They showed no interest in my perfect test scores, while they excessively praised Mary for getting a 70. They never thanked me for helping with the dishes, but they overly thanked Mary just for bringing them to the sink. With parents who only spoiled my sister, and she looked down on me with a smug face. The only one who was kind to me was my aunt. Our house was about a 15-minute walk from my aunt's, and I often visited her since I was little. My aunt always called me a smart and kind child and cherished me. I loved how she listened to me and talked to me at eye level, so I frequently visited her house. However, my parents didn't seem to like that. Are you going to your aunt's house again? She's not free either, don't bother her and stay home. My mom scolded me, looking as if she was disgusted just by remembering my aunt. But since my aunt had told me, it's not a bother at all, come over whenever you want. I ignored my mom's words and kept visiting her. Maybe because they didn't like my attitude, or because my aunt and I were smarter, my parents and sister always spoke ill of us. It's unbelievable that my aunt is still single at over 40. I have 3 boyfriends. Proud intellectuals like her are disliked by men. Poor thing. As a child, their cruel words hurt me, but I gradually learned to let them slide off, influenced by my aunt's attitude of not caring at all. Eventually, when I started my job, I moved out and living alone. Choosing a new place and moving was overwhelming, but my aunt helped me with everything, one step at a time. On top of that, my aunt even helped with my moving expenses, and I'm really grateful to her. Thanks to her support, I now live independently, away from my family home. While I started a stable career, my sister Mary lived a careless life. Perhaps because of her good looks, Mary has always been popular with the opposite sex and led a free-spirited love life. After years of such a lifestyle, she unexpectedly became pregnant with a child, and the father was unknown. I thought she might choose not to have the baby, given the uncertainty, but surprisingly, she decided to give birth. However, Mary didn't prepare herself to be a parent and just went through with the pregnancy casually. She didn't attend any prenatal classes and didn't seem serious about childcare, often dumping her baby, named Michael, on me to go out and have fun. So, take good care of Michael for me. I'm off. Wait, Mary. If you're going out, take Michael with you. She's not listening. Oh, whatever. My sister lived at home and could have enlisted my mother's help, but I was appalled at her irresponsibility in forcing me, a college student at the time, to take care of a toddler who was about 6 months old. My dad had passed away a few years earlier, and for some reason, my mom didn't help with taking care of her grandson, which I found utterly incomprehensible. As Michael grew older and needed less care, Mary gradually stopped leaving him with me. However, I still couldn't shake the feeling that Mary wasn't properly looking after him, so I often visited their house to check on Michael. Every time I visited, Mary looked annoyed, but she let me in, probably because it meant she could do whatever she wanted while I was there. Michael always seemed so happy when I visited and looked sad when I left. Concerned about Michael and my sister's behavior, I couldn't bring myself to move away from our hometown. Mary, who seemed to be doing the bare minimum in raising Michael, started leaving him with me more frequently again. This time because she got a new boyfriend. With him around, I can't have a peaceful date, you know. So, you take care of him, okay? I was furious at Mary for treating her own son like a nuisance. Come on, Mary. He's your child. You should spend time with him and your boyfriend together. But no matter what I said, Mary wouldn't listen and would leave Michael with me before going out. This went on for about a year until one day, Mary and her boyfriend decided to get married. There was a meeting before the wedding with me, our mom, Mary, Michael, and Mary's boyfriend at our parents' house. Frankly, I had a terrible impression of Mary's boyfriend. He seemed flippant and lacking in common sense. And to my disbelief, he tried to hit on me when our mom and Mary briefly left the room.
Mirabelle, you're so reliable. Plus, you work at that big company, right? That's cool. Hey, how about we go out for lunch sometime? Just the two of us.
I couldn't believe my ears. Who would ask his fiancée's sister out on a date? Before I could respond, Mary and our mom returned, and the conversation ended, but it left me distrustful of him. After he left, our mom praised him highly. He's such a nice young man. Tall and a perfect match for Mary. While our mom said this with shining eyes and Mary nodded proudly, I warned them. I hate to say this, Mary, but I don't trust him. He might seem nice on the outside, but I think you should reconsider. I couldn't bring myself to tell them he had hit on me in their absence, so my warning was vague. Whether they didn't want to listen or never intended to, Mary and our mom ignored my opinion, and eventually, Mary married him. Since then, my sister Mary and her husband began frequently leaving my nephew, Michael, with me. We're going on a trip with him, so take care of him for me, okay?
Mary, again. Why don't you take Michael with you once in a while?
As usual, they didn't listen to me and just left. Their selfish behavior was infuriating, but seeing Michael looking up at me anxiously, I calmed down. I couldn't let my innocent nephew see me upset. I took care of Michael not for my sister and her husband, but for him. I cherished every moment with Michael, despite my resentment towards my sister, her husband, and our indifferent mother. But then, one day, an incident occurred. As usual, Mary and her husband suddenly showed up at my house to leave Michael with me before going on a trip. However, I was about to leave for work, as it was a busy period and I had to work on the weekend. Sorry, but I really have to go to work now, so I can't take care of him today. Hearing this, Mary and her husband reacted angrily.
What? You should just skip work. It's Sunday, you're supposed to be off. Are you lying just because you don't want to take care of him? You have such a bad attitude.
Frustrated with their selfishness, I raised my voice.
Enough. I really have to go to work today. For once, take Michael with you on your trip. Aren't you his parents?
Surprised by my rare outburst, they reluctantly left. However, I wondered if they would really take Michael with them just because I said so. I had a bad feeling about it. With these thoughts, I rushed to my office to avoid being late. Late at night. After finally finishing work, I walked through the quiet residential streets towards my home. I wondered if Mary and her husband had properly taken Michael with them, or if they had left him alone at home. Worried, I decided to check on their house before heading home. When I arrived, the house was dark and eerily quiet. They must have taken Michael with them, I thought, feeling relieved. Just to be sure, I decided to look around their house before going home. But as I approached the backyard, I was shocked and nearly screamed, quickly covering my mouth.
Michael! Michael, why are you here?
Incredibly, Michael was lying in the doghouse with their pet dog, Max. I rushed over and shook his shoulder, and he woke up rubbing his eyes. Huh? Mirabelle, why are you here? He was confused, having just woken up. I calmed him down by stroking his head. After Michael calmed down, I asked why he was sleeping in the doghouse. The unbelievable story he told left me speechless. Apparently, Mary and her husband had left Michael at home and gone on a trip with our mother. Moreover, my brother-in-law had put Michael in the doghouse instead of the house. Save on the electricity bill, and sleep with the dog until we get back. And don't you dare do anything strange. After glaring at Michael, my brother-in-law left with Mary and the others. Incidentally, the dog that was sleeping with Michael was originally my brother-in-law's pet. He brought it when he started living with Mary after their marriage, but he stopped taking care of it, leaving Michael as the sole caretaker. The dog's condition wasn't great, probably due to the limited care a young child like Michael could provide. However, the emaciated dog cuddled close to Michael, watching us intently. My heart ached at their sight, and I hugged them tightly.
Thanks for telling me, that must have been tough. Why don't you come to my house today? Let's sleep together.
Michael nodded happily, and I took him and the quietly accompanying dog back to my home. After ensuring Michael and the dog were asleep, I stepped outside and called Mary, her husband, and our mother. To confront them about leaving Michael behind and to inform them that he and the dog were staying at my place. However, none of them answered their phones. Reluctantly, I gave up calling and sent a brief message stating that I was taking care of Michael, then headed to the police station with him in the morning. There, I consulted the police about Mary and her husband frequently leaving Michael alone. The police immediately called them for questioning, and Mary, who answered the phone, promised to return home right away. They ignored my calls but responded to the police, leaving me with mixed feelings as I waited for their return. A few hours later, Mary, her husband, and our mother, who had returned from their trip, arrived at the police station. We apologize for causing a disturbance. We planned to take our child on the trip, but he threw a tantrum just before departure, insisting he didn't want to go. Our son adores the family dog and often wants to stay by its side. He probably sneaked out to the doghouse, how embarrassing. Their blatant lies were overwhelming. However, the police seemed to believe my smooth-talking brother-in-law. Since there were no bruises or signs of physical abuse on Michael, the police did not consider it a case of child neglect, and they got away with just a warning. As we left the police station and were out of sight, Mary, her husband, and our mother's attitudes changed drastically, and they burst into anger.
How dare you embarrass us like this? You ruined our enjoyable trip. You're so useless. If you couldn't take care of Michael, you should have just left him alone. Why didn't you just say you could take him from the start? I was working until late at night. I couldn't take care of him. And do you even realize what you did? Leaving a young child in an outdoor doghouse, what were you thinking?
My counterarguments were ignored as they continued to berate me. It was absurd. They were the ones who left Michael and went on a trip, but they acted as if I was the unreasonable one. My head spun with their accusations. Then, my brother-in-law made an unbelievable proposal.
Oh my God, shut up. If you want to take care of something so badly, take that dog back.
He laughed, saying it would be less hassle and they'd have more space in the yard without the doghouse, while Mary and our mother nodded in agreement. Seeing them, I realized that as long as Michael lived with them, he would never be happy. I blurted out,
I'll take care of not just Max, but Michael too.
My offer was perfectly reasonable, but Mary rejected it. That won't do. He still has his uses. I couldn't understand what she meant. How could she think of using her own child? What did she plan to use him for? Confused and angry, they pushed the dog onto me and, appearing nonchalant, grabbed Michael's hand to leave. Come on, we're going home.
I don't want to go back. I want to stay with Mirabelle. I want to go to Mirabelle's house. Quiet. Your home is over here. Come on, let's go.
Mary and her husband forcibly took the crying and resisting Michael with them. My heart ached at the sight of my nephew crying out for help like that. I couldn't just leave him like that. I made up my mind and called someone. Hello? I have something I need to talk about. A few days later. On a day off, I was relaxing at home when the doorbell rang insistently. Wondering what was going on, I checked the monitor to see Mary, her husband, and our mother standing there. Puzzled, I opened the door, only to be greeted by their furious shouting.
What have you done, Mirabelle?
Michael, scared by my sister's loud voice, was trembling and had a pale face. Feeling sorry for him and not wanting to cause a disturbance in the neighborhood, I invited them inside. Why are you yelling all of a sudden? Michael is scared, you know.
Shut up. You're the one who snitched, aren't you? Because of you, we're in big trouble now.
Mary yelled the moment she entered the house. Realizing what she meant, I had an idea. What are you talking about? I just had a casual chat with Aunt.
What?
Ignoring Mary's shocked expression, I reflected on the events of the past few days. The day Michael was forcibly taken back by Mary and her husband, I had called my aunt. My aunt works for a private investigation company and conducts personal investigations. That day, I had asked her to investigate Mary and her husband. I needed evidence of their neglect and abuse of Michael to take to the police. During the investigation, a shocking truth was uncovered. Mary and her husband had never submitted their marriage registration, so legally, they were not husband and wife. Taking advantage of her status, the older sister was a single mother who was receiving illegal welfare. It was also discovered that Mary had worked at a friend's store during her unemployment benefit period and received cash payments without reporting it. My aunt was able to get a firm grip and put together evidence that my sister and brother-in-law were living together and that they were receiving illegal unemployment benefits. Armed with this evidence, I reported them to the authorities. Judging by how Mary and her husband stormed in and their complaints, it seemed the authorities had taken action. Because of you, we have to return the money, her husband yelled, likely meaning they were being asked to refund the benefits they had received. I couldn't help but feel they got what they deserved and looked at them coldly. It's your fault for illegally receiving benefits. You should return what you owe. However, Mary and her husband continued to rant irrationally. Their demands were utterly selfish.
That's nonsense. What we received is ours, there's no way we're giving it back. Exactly. And how old do you think that unemployment benefit thing is?
I was left speechless by their outrageous claims. While Mary and her husband kept selfishly yelling and blaming me, I called the police to avoid causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. The police arrived quickly and tried to calm them down. However, when my brother-in-law resisted and pushed one of the officers, the atmosphere changed dramatically. You're being detained for obstructing public duties, the police said as they took Mary, her husband, and our mother to the police station, despite their fierce resistance. Worried they might return to my house after being released, I decided to take Michael and the dog to a pet-friendly hotel.
Let's stay here for a while, just the three of us, you, Michael, and Max.
I said with a smile to Michael, who joyfully raised his hands in excitement.
Yay! Max, it's been a while. Let's play a lot.
Seeing Michael happily playing with the dog, I felt good about taking bold actions. As I expected, Mary and her husband were released by the police that night and seemed to have come to my house. Fortunately, a patrolling officer noticed their suspicious behavior of persistently ringing the doorbell and questioned them. Startled, Mary and her husband quickly left the scene. Later, I learned that Mary and her husband had to sell their house to repay the wrongly received benefits. To put an end to the issues with them, I left Michael with my aunt and went to meet Mary and our mother. As soon as we met at the diner, they started rattling off about their situation. It turned out Mary and her husband, along with our mother, had been living day to day on his earnings and her illegally obtained benefits, with hardly any savings. To refund the benefits, they had no choice but to sell their house and were now barely getting by living in our family home. Apparently, the mastermind behind the benefit fraud was my brother-in-law, who had other suspicions against him and was still at the police station. Mary, now disillusioned with my brother-in-law, said tiredly, "I'm done with him, I'm going to leave him." "Why didn't you stop me when I said I wanted to marry him? If you had warned me more, I might not have married him." I could only feel exasperated at my sister, who started to blame me while glaring at me. After all, I had warned my sister during the initial meeting with my brother-in-law that he is not trustworthy. Since she chose not to heed that advice and continued her relationship with him, it's fair to say that what happened was her own doing. Interrupting Mary's continuous complaints about my brother-in-law, I brought up the topic of Michael. Why did they always leave him behind? Couldn't our mother have taken care of him? Their answers were more trivial than I expected. "Well, we just don't like him. He's a bit too much like you, too smart for his own good. We just don't like him." That was their reason for pushing Michael onto me and leaving him in a doghouse. As I felt helpless at their irrationality, Mary and our mother proposed something absurd. Ignoring my feelings completely, my sister and mother began to say something utterly outrageous. They wanted to live in my house because they had no money and nowhere to live after selling theirs to repay the benefits. Apparently, our mother had been practically living with Mary and her husband, and our family home was left neglected.
Your house is too big for just one person, so it should be fine, right? Michael has taken a liking to you, so if we all live together with him, everything will work out perfectly, right? It's a good idea, isn't it?
Completely ignoring my feelings and convenience, they continued with their selfish demands. I sighed deeply and informed them of a fact. "Sorry, but I'm moving out today. That house is a rental, and I can't just hand it over to you." In fact, I had decided to move to another town to avoid any further involvement with my sister Mary and our mother. Upon hearing this, they predictably erupted in surprise.
"What? I didn't hear about this."
"Why are you moving, and where to?" They probed into the details of my move. However, I didn't answer them. Instead, I asked something in return.
"Is it okay if I take Michael in and raise him? You don't need to force yourselves to raise him just for the benefits anymore, right?
He's of no use to you now, is he?" As I said this with sarcasm, Mary and our mother turned red and trembled. Then, they tearfully pleaded with me.
"Then take us with you. We'll do anything, even housework. Right? If you're taking Michael, it's no problem for us to be there too, right?"
Seeing their desperate faces, I looked at them with contempt. "No way.
I never want to live with you two again. Can you please stop bothering me from now on?"
As I firmly pushed them away, Mary and our mother were speechless and stunned. Eventually, Mary regained her composure and began to make a scene.
"Don't joke with me, Mirabelle. How dare you? Just show us to your new place."
As she yelled, Mary stood up and grabbed a menu to hit me. During the commotion, the menu hit a glass filled with water, causing the glass to fall to the floor with a loud crash and shatter. Despite the commotion, Mary continued her tantrum until the angry staff called the police. The arriving officers restrained them. In this short period, they once again found themselves under police care, prompting the police to exclaim in anger, "You two again. Enough is enough." Even Mary quieted down when scolded by the police. I glanced at her, now subdued, and stood up. "I'll discuss Michael's child support through a lawyer later." With that, I left the diner. Later, my well-informed aunt told me that Mary and our mother had started working to support themselves. However, their illegal benefit claims and the diner incident were well known in the neighborhood, and they were regarded coldly. Their poor work attitude also made them unpopular with customers, and their jobs seemed to be hanging by a thread. Ultimately, they still lived in the deteriorating family home, which now had leaks and needed repairs. Yet, they spent all their earnings, unable to afford the necessary fixes. Now in winter, they are living in a cold, leaky house. As for Michael and me, we started our new life in a new home. Michael, living with me, smiles more than before, playing happily and energetically every day with the dog. My aunt also visits us often, and Michael has become very fond of her, calling her grandma. My aunt has become completely smitten with my adorable nephew, and now she spoils him so much that she would not hurt a hair on his head. Seeing them laugh together makes me feel happy too. My aunt plans to move in with us once she finishes her current work.
I can't wait to see what kind of fun and happy life I will be able to lead.